Our transition to electrification is really critical.
Tightening emissions regulations and a shift toward SUVs are making it hard to keep producing gas-guzzling sports cars.
This is the way Dodge does EVs.
The need for alternatives to diesel is steadily rising as stricter emission regulations are established. Some of the very first Tesla semis are hitting the roads.
Following in Tesla's footsteps, there's another electric vehicle company that's been making a name for itself.
Rivian unveiling a new $5 billion battery and assembly plant.
Whether the companies want to admit it or the states want to admit it, they are battling for investments in automotive like they've never had to do before.
I've told everybody throughout my entire life, if you see me driving an electric car, shoot me in the head. Put it right behind my ear, angle it up a little bit, and pull the trigger so you get a good shot at it, right?
Meet Alan Meehan. He is one of what is sometimes called the Mopar faithful, people who are deeply devoted to all things Chrysler.
It doesn't take much to get it going 100.
Dodge, which is one of 14 brands owned by Euro-American giant Stellantis, makes the biggest, most fuel-thirsty American muscle cars you can buy. But it is replacing its Challenger and Charger models with at least one all-electric vehicle. Hope is to retain the magic of its muscle cars in an EV form. At first glance, the company could risk losing some die-hard fans like Meehan. But even some of them may be coming around.
I read this article the other day, and man, I really like that car. I said it out loud, right? I really do like that car.
While they are a small share of total sales for Stellantis, leaning into American muscle and performance has brought Dodge success and many die-hard fans. But tightening emissions regulations and a shift toward SUVs are making it hard to keep producing gas-guzzling sports cars.
Our transition to electrification is really critical. I mean, this is like really walking a tightrope for us.
This car, I want to keep it exactly like it is. I mean, I don't want to change one thing about this car. This is how it came. Like my Hemi Cuda, that's a clone car, and I put that together so I wouldn't wreck the good cars because I like to get on the cars. I like to drive them, ride them, have fun with them, do some burnouts, that kind of thing. And I wouldn't do that with these cars. These are collectible cars.
In his airplane hangar outside Minneapolis, Minnesota, Alan Meehan has several Dodges and some classic Plymouths. Not too far away, Greg Nelson is another Mopar believer. He buys, fixes, stores, and sells classic cars, mostly Plymouths and Dodges.
That one only has 19 miles on it. That's the only car I don't drive. Because the guy before me didn't drive it. I said, you wrecked it now. Now I can't drive it. But I knew it was one of 20 and I had to have it.
He calls this place the Mopar Ponderosa.
I built this to have a hangout for my stuff. And then, of course, other people wanted to have their car fixed here or find them a car. And it just keeps going, and that's it. This is one of 3 or 4 black Challenger convertibles with a red interior. And you know, it's probably a $125,000 car today. Would I sell it? No.
This Cuda is worth $600,000.
$600,000 car?
They only made 19 of them.
This one is more than $1 million.
$1.5 million would buy it, I guess, but it's the only one.
For collectors and enthusiasts like Meehan and Nelson, Mopars are just different from everything else.
It's the devil.
Including rivals made by Ford and General Motors. They made some of the most daring cars of the muscle car era.
It is the dust trail from the Roadrunner. Push the horn.
You gotta be kidding me.
Factory, that's all it was.
Mopar just did all the wild, crazy stuff. And so look at today, it's the same thing. They've been the leader in the crazy cars and colors. You just gravitate to that uniqueness.
When I think of Dodge, I think of power and I think of styling. They're always thinking out of the box. I just love the stuff they come up with.
Dodge made all kinds of cars over the decades. Pickup trucks, minivans, and full-size sedans. Trucks sold today under the Ram Trucks brand were originally branded as the Dodge Ram. Dodge revived the Charger name in 2006 and the Challenger in 2008. Meehan has an SRT-8 Challenger from that first model year.
We drive this thing all over the place. It's been to Phoenix twice. We just drove it up in northern Minnesota.
It dug deeper into that brand identity shortly after Chrysler emerged from bankruptcy and the financial crisis.
About a decade ago, we decided that we were going to distill the brand down to its performance essence. And the brand is all about American muscle and performance.
Then in 2015, it debuted the Hellcat Challenger. Meehan has one of those as well.
These cars are second to none for engineering. They're just great cars to drive. They're powerful. They're light-footed. They stop well. They handle well.
Dodge is known for its monster engines. The Hellcat comes with 707 horsepower. A version called the Hellcat Red Eye kicked that up to 797 horsepower.
So Red Eyes, and God, you floor that thing and in 2 seconds you're going 100.
But the most powerful of the bunch was the Dodge Demon, a very limited version of the Challenger that came with 840 horsepower. The Demon was for a time the quickest production car in the world. It could go 0 to 60 in 2.3 seconds and run the quarter mile in 9.65 seconds. Meehan and Nelson each have one.
No car had even been close to that. Typically it was a drag car to do that. And this is a street car you could buy and you got a warranty and everything.
The Demon's ragged power, man. That thing is something else.
Okay.
Yeah, it's crazy. A list of things you have to sign and initial when you buy the car to make sure you know what you're getting. It's really something.
The only car in the world to do a wheelie, right? From the factory.
The Demon was a limited run vehicle, but the Hellcat surpassed Dodge's sales expectations. By the time the car goes out of production, Dodge expects to sell 80,000 of them. The Challenger inspires special loyalty. IHS Markit released a survey of customer loyalty to various manufacturers and makes. Mopar vehicles took top honors in several categories. Among them was the Dodge Challenger in the sports car category, even though the Challenger is built on a full-size sedan platform and is much larger than most other sports cars. Since 2020, Dodge has also topped J.D. Power's Appeal survey, which measures the emotional connection consumers have with cars and brands. While Dodge has become known for supercharged V8 engines, environmental laws are proving them pricey.
What we said very early on was, we have two choices. We can either say, look, we can't make this transition because we see where the industry is going. We can shut down the brand, or we could look at it and say, is there something that we can do here to really have the same playbook that we created about a decade ago?
The challenge is that the auto market, EV or otherwise, has shifted away from traditional sedans and sport cars and toward crossovers and sport utility vehicles. As for Dodge, the company has long sold the Durango and recently debuted the Hornet small SUV, but its muscle cars and sports cars are its identity.
We've really built this brand on the backs of some of those extreme performance vehicles. Hellcats, Red Eyes, Demons, the Scat Packs really is our biggest seller. All of them are very aggressive performance vehicles. Muscle car's not supposed to look like a melted jelly bean. It's supposed to look like a big, blocky American performance vehicle.
There are other obstacles to electrifying Dodge. Fans adore the unmistakable rumble of a V8 engine.
To get consumers involved and excited, you really need to connect to that emotional level. And it goes beyond the fact that Tesla or Lucid or fill in the blank can go 0 to 60 in 2 seconds.
Dodge built the Charger EV with this driving experience in mind. The vehicle has a shiftable transmission and a simulated engine note Dodge has said will be above 100 decibels. Both of these innovations are controversial.
I have heard some pushback from some folks who say that it's akin to the turn of the century in the 1900s when cars had fake horse heads attached to the front of it so folks could more easily switch away from horse-driven carriages and it wouldn't spook horses.
Certainly some people are saying, oh, that's fake noise, and how can that be real, and how can that be useful? We don't know everything about it yet. Dodge just said that it's real noise. It's air going through baffles, and it's not a piped in MP3 file that's pushed into your computer.
To be fair, a lot of cars already come with manipulated sound, even fuel-burning ones.
An electric motor makes a very high, whiny, pitchy noise. And the challenge that Dodge is trying to work through is that sound is definitely a part of that experience.
While other EVs are focused on keeping quiet, we amplified ours.
It's a part of a visceral sports car experience. And so what does that look like in the future? And what is the right sound?
I'd have to hear it again, but what I heard was, well, that's interesting, I don't know. Yeah. Nothing sounds like these cars. I love the way these things sound.
The shiftable transmission is a slightly different issue. Transmissions are needed to manage the power from a gas-burning engine. Electric vehicles work differently, so multiple gears aren't needed. The vast majority of EVs have only one gear, including high-performance ones like Tesla's. There are exceptions. The Porsche Taycan has a 2-speed transmission, and Formula E race cars have multiple gears.
I think a step in the right direction for them is it's got to shift. I don't want to just get in the car and push down on the accelerator and have the power be linear. I don't want that at all. I want it like this. I want to be able to shift it and have some fun with it.
I'm really excited that engineers are looking at these solutions. I think that that's something that we haven't been looking at as closely in general as the industry, because the transition to electric vehicles is so complicated and there's so many things to deal with.
A vehicle inspired by the SRT Charger EV concept will enter production in 2024, the year after production of the current Challenger and Charger ends.
I'm not going to say I didn't get my fair share of hate mail from some enthusiasts. I absolutely did. And we looked at what the negative sentiment was out in our customer base on this transition. And it was high. It was very high. We knew that our customer base, 13 million strong, are going to need soak time. They're going to need time to make this transition in their mind to electrification.
We didn't ask for the rules to change. We didn't want them to change, but they did. And we can try to outrun them, but that would be a 9-second pass straight into extinction.
Dodge launched a 2-year business plan with scheduled quarterly updates to keep customers informed. That includes the Speed Week event in August 2022, where it unveiled both the Hornet and the Charger EV. There were about 20 million people watching the 3-day event. Tracking social media posts and mentions, Dodge found negative sentiment about the Charger EV was initially high, but it dropped over the course of 3 days, eventually settling below 50%.
Now trust me, this is not the EV that they want you to have. This is the way Dodge does EVs.
What was interesting to me was not the fact that we were over 50% positive. It was the fact that it got better and better and better each day as they learned more and more and more.
Nelson and Mian are at least open to trying out the new car.
I think it's a cool looking car, and I want one because I want to have the first, one of the first ones, but I don't know.
You got to drive it and test it out and see if you like it, but I guess if electricity stays super cheap, then maybe I'd drive one. But this is more fun. It just is. Makes noise, it scares you.
Some analysts wonder if Dodge wouldn't be better off trying to attract a new audience of core EV buyers.
This brand in Stellantis' stable is the most exposed to the millennial audience, and millennials are the customer segment that wants EVs the most. And so this is an opportunity to make a true EV, kind of what the Ford Mach-E did. That's more EV than it is a Mustang. And it's done exceptionally well and targeted a new audience.
Of total Stellantis vehicles sold, RBC estimates Ram makes up 10% and Jeep makes up 19%. Dodge only contributes about 6%.
Stellantis is kind of late to the game, especially compared to probably its most often compared peers, Volkswagen and Renault. And so it's going to be a really expensive undertaking to electrify. Battery costs are actually going up. While EVs get more expensive near term, Stellantis has to support all these disparate brands. There really isn't a cohesive strategy of why you need all of these brands.
In the meantime, fans of what might be the last era of the V8-powered performance car are making their peace with its end.
They're going to discontinue the gas-powered V8 engines, is the way I understand it. And being a Mopar and a Hemi guy, I'm sad to see that. I'm sad to see them go.
I don't know. I still think these will be more fun than an electric car, but that's what they're going to build, I guess. It's always better to have things greener and better, but you got to be practical about it. In the meantime, I'll drive this stuff. Even at $10 a gallon, I'm still going to buy gas. Oh, I'm crazy, I guess, about cars somewhat, but I'm not crazy.
Living the dream?
Or your dream.
I don't know. I got more cars to buy. We're not done yet, I don't think.
In Modesto, California, some of the very first Tesla semis are hitting the roads.
The Tesla that you can see behind us is fully operational. They're running up and down the road within a 400-mile radius, delivering product to all of our distribution locations and to our customers. We use them the same way you would see any traditional Class 8 vehicle delivering product.
PepsiCo, which owns Cheetos, Doritos, and other Frito-Lay products, pre-ordered 100 back in 2017. Walmart and FedEx have also placed pre-orders, but Pepsi was the first customer to take delivery of the new truck.
PepsiCo owns one of the largest private fleets in North America, and that's one of the reasons we have partnered with Tesla. We have the 15 in Modesto that we're launching, and then we have 21 in Sacramento, and then we are working plans for the additional units up to the 100.
First announced in 2017, the Semi has been one of the longest delayed products in Tesla's history.
What makes the Tesla Semi so different, and really Elon Musk's introduction of it, is he really brought the awareness to the broader public. He made trucking sexy.
And it could also be its vehicle with the biggest impact.
Even though trucks are only a small portion of all the vehicles operating on California's roads, they are responsible for the vast majority of carcinogenic diesel particulate matter.
Although it's only 1% of vehicle production, it's 20% of vehicle emissions. And it's over a third of all the particulate emissions.
The need for alternatives to diesel is steadily rising as stricter emission regulations are established.
In California, at the ports, you're not going to be able to use an ICE engine truck in the near future. Electric is an ideal solution for that.
But the launch of the new electric truck hasn't been without issues. There have been a few sightings of the Semi breaking down around Northern California.
We can have a concept vehicle, it can look great on stage, it can look really compelling and exciting and talk about a whole new future. The realities are quite different.
Welcome to the Tesla Semi truck event. I hope you like what you see. We're confident that this is a product that is better in every way from a feature standpoint, that wins on economics against diesel trucks in a worst-case scenario, and that defeats rail in a convoy scenario.
At the time, Musk said the Semi would go into production in 2019 and made other promises about the truck's capabilities.
It really shocked, no pun intended, a lot of the population about a lot of the performance metrics.
But delays caused the original timeline to slip. 5 years later, the Semi has finally arrived.
We're incredibly excited tonight to actually deliver our first production Tesla Semi trucks. And yeah, we're looking forward to actually delivering our first production trucks to PepsiCo. Yeah, sorry for the delay.
Omitted from the event, though, were details around the economics, million-mile guarantee, and autopilot features announced at the original 2017 unveiling.
When Elon Musk introduced the Tesla Semi, it was a big deal. It felt like this was a revolutionary moment for trucking. Fast forward 5 years, when they delivered the Tesla Semi to PepsiCo, it was actually a much different sort of experience. It felt like they were dialing it in. They had promised these things and were going to deliver them, but it just didn't feel like it had the hype that we had a couple of years ago.
The trucks Pepsi received don't have autonomous features activated yet.
The autonomous functionality of Tesla is not spec'd for these vehicles. They have the hardware capability. We'll get to that down the road as an additional capability.
When it was announced, the truck was touted to have an industry-leading 500-mile range.
500-mile range. And by the way, it's 500 miles
at maximum weight at highway speed.
There have been some initial reports that they can't handle the weight or the distance that was initially promised. And so it's more of a wait and see.
To start, Pepsi is delivering Frito-Lay products around 425 miles per charge. It's also delivering Pepsi out of its Sacramento warehouse on 100-mile daily routes, going directly to stores, and 300 to 400-mile runs to other warehouses.
The contents that are the trailer can weigh about 45,000 pounds is really the accepted weight. And potato chips are made of a lot of air. When we look at soda cans, aluminum, and liquids, these things weigh a lot, and they will weigh out.
Pepsi wouldn't speak to the price of the trucks, but it is estimated to cost around $180,000.
The cost benefit is still a bit of a question mark because I think the price new of an electric truck isn't quite settled yet. I think it's safe to assume that it'll be at least double the price of the equivalent diesel model.
First generation and early development has additional research funding and all that. That's where the partnership and support comes in. But ongoing, we believe there is a positive economic business case for electrifying the fleet.
But experts are predicting that electric trucks will be cheaper to operate over time.
When you take everything into account, a diesel truck will be 20% more expensive than a Tesla Semi per mile.
If you have a predictable charging cost, you can eliminate the expense of fuel and the more volatile pricing that comes along with fuel.
The big cost savings that a lot of people are seeing as they transition to EVs is that the amount of maintenance is significantly lower than traditional vehicles. Obviously, many fleets are thinking about it from that perspective. That total lifetime cost is significantly better.
Diesel vehicle storage tanks are cheaper and the fuel's more expensive. Electricity's more affordable, batteries are more expensive. There's always a constant dynamic between those two, right? And so we like to diversify our portfolio of solutions.
Starting in 2019, Frito-Lay has been transforming its Modesto facility to demonstrate the sustainable benefits of zero and near zero emission technologies.
This project has delivered a 91% reduction in greenhouse gas, and we're using this as a showcase to then cascade to our other operations.
PepsiCo partnered with the California Air Resources Board to make it all happen, matching its $15.4 million in incentives to purchase vehicles, including Tesla semis, to add to its fleet of over 80,000 assets.
We developed what's called the Zero and Near Zero Emissions Freight Facilities Pilot Program back in the 2019 timeframe. And this Frito-Lay facility won one of those grants for a complete transformation of this facility to zero emissions.
We thought it would make a smart move to make the deposit, partner with Tesla. So we put a deposit down several years ago for 100 units when they first announced. We thought it would have great application. We had the experience from the last 10 years with other EV products.
Pepsi received its first Tesla semis in December and already has them in use.
It takes us a couple of weeks between upfitting, logoing, labeling, and driver training. We'll continue to scale that up where over the next several months, most of the drivers will be certified and trained to drive the Tesla vehicles.
The trucks have replaced routes previously being served by diesel.
This vehicle right here with a 400-mile range enables the driver to leave from Modesto and return home without stopping and charging anywhere along the route.
Our average length of haul for over the road is about 425 miles. So we believe across the entire portfolio at Frito-Lay and beverages that the Tesla semis will meet our delivery needs based on our network.
To charge the trucks, Frito-Lay installed 4 megachargers, Tesla's latest charging technology.
What you can see behind me are our 4 Tesla megachargers. They're capable of charging 750 kilowatts. These trucks here take about an hour to charge, which will give us about 400 miles of range.
The local utilities, the Tesla infrastructure team, we had to bring additional power into the site.
Although Pepsi wouldn't allow us to interview the drivers, O'Connell says feedback has been positive.
They like not needing to fuel the vehicles, right? They come in, plug them in, and can leave them, and they like the overall performance.
In addition to the Tesla semis, Frito-Lay Modesto is also using electric trucks from BYD and Peterbilt.
We have 6 of these Peterbilt electrified route trucks that are charged on site and used by our sales team to deliver our product to any of our stores in the community here in Modesto.
We have several hundred of those vehicles in several locations that we've implemented.
The company is also using compressed natural gas trucks.
This is a fully operational Class 8 CNG vehicle. We have 37 of them in operations here in Modesto. We have the same complement of range that you would see in any diesel tractor.
Competition in the electric truck space is heating up. As the Tesla Semi enters service, it comes at a time when several truck manufacturers are embracing the transition to electric and alternative fuels.
All the traditional diesel truck manufacturers also have electric truck offerings. So your Freightliners, Kenworths, Peterbilts, Volvos, Max, International, they all have electric trucks that are out there already.
Volvo just recently launched its VNR electric semi, a Class 8 truck with a 565 kilowatt battery capable of up to 275 miles of range. Daimler has announced plans to develop its own heavy-duty electric truck, the Mercedes-Benz e-Actros Long Haul, that will have a range of around 310 miles. Freightliner, also a part of Daimler, has the e-Cascadia, a Class 8 semi with a 315 and 475 kilowatt version offering up to 250 miles of range.
One of the advantages that other OEMs have over Tesla is that they know how to sell into the over-the-road trucking business and into the Class 8 environment. They've been doing it for years. They have a lot of experience. They know what fleets want. They know how they spec trucks. They know what drivers want. They have maintenance networks that exist across the country. They're just much better positioned today than what Tesla is to sell into this environment.
But even with so much activity in the space, it's still in early stages.
To introduce an electric vehicle that can solve the mission that's required of these vehicles, it takes many years, many designs, and a lot of testing and a substantial amount of investment. We're in the very early part of that cycle, and it's going to take a few years before we see these vehicles become commercially viable.
For trucking to go fully electric, it will require significant charging infrastructure development.
There's a huge amount of infrastructure that needs to be built. We think about it as the kind of infrastructure that gets built once a century. You had the railroads 2 centuries ago, you had the National Highway Network a century ago, and the scale is very similar to that.
Charging sites for heavy-duty trucks are much more demanding than your average EV.
If you have 20 semi-trucks charging all at one time, that's almost the same amount of power that it would take to power 20 big box stores. Think of that kind of scale of power required. The reliability is also very important. Fleet, for them, time is money, and they have to know that their vehicles will be able to move when they want them to.
Electric trucks also have a weight problem. Compared to diesel, they're much heavier, impacting the total load that they can transport.
The total weight, and that includes the truck, trailer, and the cargo, is 80,000 pounds in the United States. They have allowed, through some of the new regulation, for electric vehicles to go to 82,000 pounds, but that's the maximum gross weight that a vehicle can have.
For Tesla, scaling manufacturing of its new truck will be an uphill battle.
We'll be ramping up semi-production through next year. As everyone knows at this point, it takes about a year to ramp up production. We're tentatively aiming for 50,000 units in 2024 for Tesla Semi in North America.
That sounds extremely high. When you think that 240,000 Class 8 trucks built total, Freightliner builds maybe 50,000 of those. So they're talking about competing with the big dogs in the existing commercial truck space.
To meet this ambitious goal, the company just announced it will expand its Gigafactory in Nevada with a new 100 gigawatt-hour cell factory and a high-volume factory to manufacture the Semi.
The numbers I saw, maybe 500 this year will be built. 500 this year I can definitely see. 50,000 in 2024, I guess we'll have to wait to see on that one.
Despite the progress being made, not all trucking can go emission-free.
If you look at diesel, in terms of the power it can produce in the engine, on a weight basis, it produces far more power than what an electric powertrain will do. So because of those trade-offs, you're effectively dealing with these compromises that you don't have to make with diesel.
Eventually, though, regulations may force most freight operations to abandon diesel.
The more stringent EPA regulations are coming out. There's going to be another level of diesel emissions regulations going into effect in 2027. This is going to be an all-of-the-above solution to meet EPA requirements. So we'll see some hydrogen fuel cell trucks out there. We'll see plenty of natural gas trucks out there, probably.
In the U.S., California has been one of the most aggressive states in driving this.
California has a regulation called Advanced Clean Trucks, which requires manufacturers to sell an increasing proportion of their sales as zero emissions, and ultimately getting to fully zero emissions by 2045 in all sectors of the heavy-duty trucking industry.
And with some of the country's largest ports, it is putting significant pressure on the industry to adapt.
It is the epicenter of North American import and export supply chain. And so what that means is that if California forces the industry to go carbon neutral and eliminate the internal combustion engine, it means that automotive manufacturers and truck manufacturers have zero recourse against that. They will have to do this, because if they don't, they won't be able to sell vehicles into the industry, into one of the most important markets in the entire world.
Operationalizing any type of fleet portfolio, electrified, natural gas, renewable, diesel, there are challenges, but you can really make it all work without making as big a trade-offs as people think.
The next 5 to 10 years, you'll start to see a pretty significant inflection in the S-curve for adoption, especially for commercial vehicles, given that total cost of operation is significantly more beneficial than ICE vehicles. I'd say by the end of the decade, I would say at least 50% of commercial fleets would be electrified.
We know we have the technology and we have the policies in place. It's just a matter of getting the coordination to happen and continuing to make progress.
You got to give Elon Musk credit. This guy promises an enormously exciting future with really transformational technologies, and he's a world-class visionary that really is trying to set the tone for everything, and he's put everybody on notice. And eventually, they may get there. We may get to a point where we actually see the performance metrics that he's promised and the economics that he's promised, but we're not there yet.
Following in Tesla's footsteps, there's another electric vehicle company that's been making a name for itself, with a unique twist.
Rivian is probably the most well-backed and important startup outside of Tesla.
And what makes them very unique is that they're focusing right now on SUVs and pickup trucks, which are obviously high demand in the United States.
We've called them sort of the Patagonia of electric vehicles, very much an outdoorsy lifestyle positioning.
Before even shipping a single vehicle, the company secured major investments from Ford and Amazon.
The timing of those investments were really important because they were from independent, large companies that said, hey, we have enough faith in this that we're going to invest pretty significantly.
Even more impressive, the new company was trusted with the largest electric delivery vehicle order ever, 100,000 custom-built vans for Amazon's last-mile fleet by 2030.
Amazon's an incredibly important partner to us. It's allowed us to think really big around a complete reset of what is a commercial vehicle, what is a fleet vehicle.
Our focus is really on sustainability. We designed this vehicle to be fully electric and have zero emissions. I think it's a game changer, and there's no vehicle like this on the road today.
That commitment is really good for them in the sense that it helps secure a future. There will be revenue coming in because they have a deal.
When Rivian went public in November 2021, it was one of the largest IPOs in U.S. history.
When they did their IPO, which was, by the way, that was a traditional IPO, not a SPAC deal like we've seen with some of the other EVs, they raised a ton of money. That's everything in the auto business if you want to be successful.
But the turbulent economy has cast a shadow over its rocketing success. As the market responded to inflation and fears of a recession, the stock took a big hit.
The biggest problem when share price falls for a company like this is that it reduces the number of bullets in their holster.
But with the Amazon deal in its back pocket, some are confident the EV maker can weather the storm.
When Amazon invested in them and put real money in them, but more importantly, put a commitment to buy all those vehicles from them, they changed the market dynamic around that company.
We'll see over the next couple of years as these are out in the field. How do they hold up? How does this work out? It could be longer term a really interesting business for Rivian.
I started the company in 2009, and the mission and the purpose of me starting the business was to have as much impact around how we think about transforming our energy and transportation system towards a carbon neutral future.
Rivian had been around for several years before anybody really knew who they were. They hired engineers and designers and project people from the automotive industry and didn't necessarily try to reinvent it themselves.
Rivian launched its first vehicle, the R1T electric truck, at the end of last year. It's been working to scale up production and is planning to ship its SUV, the R1S, built off of the same platform later this year.
It was a long process to get them to market. They've had some production snags early on. Volumes aren't huge yet, but they're doing pretty well.
When we were touring the factory with Rivian earlier this year in Normal, Illinois, it was moving at a slow pace, and it continues to move at a slow pace.
Something like our R1T has more than 2,000 components in it from more than 400 suppliers. And the orchestra of getting all those parts produced and ramped at the same rate and into the right location at the right time and in the right sequence, it's a complex process.
Even with a starting price of $73,000, its vehicles are in demand. In its 2022 second quarter earnings, the company said it has around 98,000 net pre-orders of its R1 vehicles.
People who have been in their vehicles like them. That may sound like an oversimplification, but the reality is that's a pretty big benefit.
The company had a long and arduous road leading up to production, but it had some serious help, receiving $700 million from Amazon in 2019 and $500 million from Ford a few months later.
When Ford first invested in Rivian, the intent was that they would share a platform with Rivian, that there was going to be more product collaboration between those two companies.
What Ford Motor Company did for them was production help. For a while, their production chief was on Rivian's board. They had talked about doing a product together with Rivian.
Despite working together to develop a joint vehicle, the companies ended up canceling those plans.
That kind of fell apart once Jim Farley, the CEO, decided that we're going to do this on our own.
But Rivian's partnership with Amazon has been big for the company.
The scale of Amazon just made this such a big deal. You're going to be seeing these vans everywhere over the next couple of years.
One of the biggest benefits for Rivian is the ability to get scale. Scalability for the automotive industry is huge. It brings down costs. It gives you a little bit more leverage with suppliers, something that Rivian definitely needs right now.
This was a big part of the success of their IPO, that they had this deal in their pocket, that it was a big customer who was obviously very well funded and was going to give them exposure and wasn't going away.
First announced in 2019, Amazon recently began making deliveries with the Rivian EDV 700.
We've taken feedback from drivers, from the team at Amazon to really understand how do we not only electrify a van, but importantly, how do we rethink the driving experience, the safety of the vehicle, and the usability of the vehicle.
We're beginning to roll these out across a dozen cities in the United States. By the end of the year, we'll have thousands delivering packages to more than 1 million customers across 100 major US cities.
I went through a number of different changes over the last 9 months or so as they built prototypes and Amazon beat on them, and then they came back, and this is how vehicles are developed, especially for a specific customer with specific needs.
The van, coming in 2 sizes, is a last mile vehicle that will help Amazon reach its goal of a zero-emission delivery fleet by 2040.
Rivian, and once we met them and met RJ, it was very clear to us that they shared in that mission, and we could work together to build a brand new type of sustainable fleet.
As years went by, we had an opportunity to talk to this with a number of different potential partners and found an amazing partner in Amazon, where we had this wonderfully aligned view around what we can do in terms of demonstrating a path to carbon neutrality in a really scaled way.
Last mile delivery, this is seen as a promising area for EV technology. There are a number of little companies that have tried to get into this space. We also have Ford coming in with their own electric transit van.
The close collaboration allowed Rivian to integrate technology, including cameras and fleet systems usually added aftermarket.
There's a whole separate sort of industry around converting vehicles and making sure that they upfit easily. And that's something that Amazon and Rivian are working together on to get this vehicle to be exactly what it is.
Fleet sales have become big business for automakers. For the startup, the revenue from Amazon's order is critical to helping with operations.
Ford says that something like 30% of its pickups go to commercial and government fleets.
These fleet deals are incredibly important. They're good margin, and they actually provide an interesting way for the operator, in this case Amazon, plan ahead with the manufacturer and actually make interesting innovations as part of their product development.
Things like charging can be solved more easily, where you set up the charging at a fixed location where the day begins and ends in the same spot from a charging point of view.
Total cost of ownership and sort of uptime and lower cost of maintenance over time. We're expecting all of those things to be true. You expect that over time it'll be cheaper to maintain because there are fewer parts.
Rivian says it intends to use mobile service to support its Amazon vans.
We have a mobile fleet of service vehicles that go out and service vehicles on site. In Amazon's case, where it may be at a delivery center or fulfillment center.
I do think that that is a big challenge, but not just for them. It's for any company that has this direct-to-consumer model.
Amazon's the partner, largest shareholder. I'm sure that they're going to be on the top priority, and they're probably going to be working together to not only service the vehicles at Rivian facilities, but also at Amazon facilities going forward.
Supply chain challenges are still a problem, forcing the automaker to increase prices of its consumer EVs and reduce its 2022 delivery target from 50,000 to 25,000 vehicles. And costs are mounting. In its second quarter earnings, the company reported a net loss of $1.7 billion and shared that it expects that number to grow to $5.45 billion for the full year.
COVID and the resulting consequences of the pandemic have turned the automotive industry upside down. I mean, it's unprecedented for the industry. It's never had to go through this before.
The company will need to pick up the pace if it hopes to reach its 25,000 production goal. For the first half of the year, the company produced less than 7,000 vehicles.
Managing that complete orchestra of activities across the 4 vehicles produced on 2 production lines with the global pandemic and with some of the supply challenges has been challenging, to say the least. But we're really optimistic about what the remainder of this year looks like.
And it must do this while also meeting Amazon's massive order.
I don't see any real reason why they can't meet that 100,000. More likely than not, they're going to get there a bit sooner than what they had been projected to and what they actually contracted to do. After that, it'll be interesting to see exactly how many more Amazon goes to.
For now, the company seems to be in a secure position. At the end of June, it said it had about $15.46 billion in cash and cash equivalents.
Which is, a big automaker level of reserve or close. They say that it can carry them, to 2025, give or take, even if things go awry between here and there to some extent.
But it's started to make some cuts.
Rivian has been obviously doing some layoffs, and they're not unique. The auto industry is laying off workers. Rivian, I think, just might have built up a little bit too quickly in certain areas where they might not have needed to.
They didn't cut anybody on the manufacturing side, as far as I know, or not meaningfully. It was in a lot of these sort of product teams and so forth. They did come out earlier this year and say, okay, our stock is down, the economy's looking iffy, we're going to scale back our spending a little bit and get a little tighter control on costs.
Rivian will have to contend with increasing competition. The EV market is being flooded with new models from legacy automakers, but it thinks its adventure-oriented brand will help it stand out.
We've been very focused on what's our brand, what's our philosophy, making sure it's unique, provide something that's interesting and compelling to customers.
Rivian, as of right now, is more of a threat to Jeep than they are the F-150 pickup truck from Ford or the Chevy Silverado. They are going for a free outdoors brand, and that is something that Jeep has catered to for decades.
With its R1 vehicle deliveries underway, the company has set its sights on developing its next products. Referred to as the R2 platform, these are expected to be cheaper models that will be manufactured at a new plant being built in Georgia.
We're continuing to focus on our R2 product. This is our smaller SUV platform. It'll ultimately be produced in Atlanta.
This is the Rivian idea of the Model 3 and Model Y.
And with Rivian trying to add a second plant now in Georgia, when they announced this, RJ Scrinch kind of said, we need this to be able to scale more. Many analysts actually at the time were questioning whether they needed to build this facility right now or if they could wait.
Building on its experience working with Amazon, Rivian seems likely to expand in the fleet business.
There's nothing really, I think, that would stop Rivian from being able to sell, once it has enough capacity, this type of van to every other package delivery company.
They need to expand more than just Amazon if they want to actually continue to grow. So down the line, they will definitely be going into other segments of vans. They'll be going into other markets. I couldn't see them just focusing singly on Amazon.
I like their future because they have a product that's appealing. If you look back to their, competitor, Tesla, that was the thing. That was the thing that really pushed it over the edge. It wasn't that they were just an EV company. It was that they had a cool car. that was interesting. And I think that Rivian passes that test, at least on the consumer side. And on the commercial side, they've got that deal. It needs to perform as well.
I think it's a win-win for both of the companies. And as long as the production kind of continues to go and they continue to make vans, we're going to see a lot of these on the road this year.
I think once these things are out there, people are going to be seeing them all the time, just like we see UPS vans all the time. And that is a longer-term play for them as well, just the visibility of this, raising awareness. Who's Rivian? Wait, oh, they make those funky trucks, right? Yeah, let's go look at them.
Leaders in Washington are trying to bring domestic manufacturing jobs back after a 40-year-long cycle of decline.
American auto companies, along with American labor, are committing their treasure and their talent to make electric vehicles all across America.
There's a lot of great stuff happening here in Michigan, and we are competing.
Rivian unveiling a new $5 billion battery and assembly plant based just outside of Atlanta.
There's a battle right now, and whether the companies want to admit it or the states want to admit it, like Michigan, they are battling for investments in automotive like they've never had to do before.
These changes could disrupt huge swaths of the Midwestern economy. Tens of thousands of people build parts for gasoline-powered engines in states like Michigan, Indiana, and Ohio.
What 1,000 workers took to construct in 1970, we can now construct with about 235, 240 workers.
At its height, nearly 20 million people worked in the manufacturing industry. Today, it's about 13 million. Workers could end up competing for a smaller pool of jobs that require a different set of skills.
The lines that run to drive oil or gas or any of a number of other fluids around an internal combustion engine aren't going to be there, don't have to be there.
Researchers believe that surging demand for EVs could force businesses to pivot quickly.
We find that this transition is already affecting workforce morale deeply. In some places, it's positive, there's hope for the future, but in many other places, or at the same time with some individuals, there is a lot of concern.
We've been working on products that we will manufacture in the future that will support not only electric vehicles, but other electric applications.
Can the U.S. auto industry weather the electric vehicle transition without leaving workers behind? And will this pivot be a boon or bust for people in the Midwest? The first thing to know is that electric vehicles and traditional cars are built in slightly different ways.
These jobs just are very different. So internal combustion engines, they have crankshafts, spark plugs, radiators, and the electric vehicle has the battery. So electric vehicles have fewer moving parts and require less equipment. So typically they require less manufacturing to build. The estimates put it at about 30% less.
In general, the body and the chassis, the wheels, the axles, and that kind of thing are probably still going to be very much similar in an EV, in an electric vehicle, as they are in a car today. But the lines that run to drive oil or gas or any of a number of other fluids around an internal combustion engine aren't going to be there, don't have to be there.
While the processes differ, both types of car are built by workers with lots of specialized knowledge.
The typical person who I think is on a factory floor today probably has at least a 2 or 3 year degree on manufacturing technology. That's a big turnaround from my grandfather's day, where the average worker had been to 8th grade.
Tesla is far and away the leading manufacturer of electric vehicles in the United States. But when it comes to motor vehicles, just 3 companies dominate the U.S. industry.
Historically, the big 3 were General Motors, Ford, and Chrysler.
Now, this group is playing catch-up to Tesla's burgeoning empire of battery factories and chargers. Workers in the Rust Belt are now caught in the middle of this corporate showdown.
Oftentimes, when you work for an internal combustion engine, you're working on spark plugs and you're working on certain mechanics of the car. But when you transition to an electric vehicle, you're looking at batteries, and it's a very different kind of job. So there's a lack of understanding as to whether these jobs will dry up or be transferable if there's workforce training. and what kinds of needs the company will have in the future. And so there's this kind of fear or uncertainty about those that are currently in school and how can they even train themselves to be ready for the next jobs that these factories offer.
Most of this specialized work occurs at secondary factories called OEMs.
An OEM is an original equipment manufacturer. When people talk about OEM, they think about the automaker. They are fed parts from hundreds, if not thousands, of different suppliers, and they produce a vehicle for the consumer. With the diversification of the auto industry, the suppliers have really become an integral part of a lot of this.
We are a supplier, an automotive parts supplier to the OEM customer.
NGK Spark Plugs is one of the biggest parts suppliers in the U.S.
Got a large manufacturing operation in Brazil, of course throughout Japan, but also manufacturing in Southeast Asia, in France, and also right here in the United States in West Virginia.
This company and many, many others are changing with the times as governments and car companies commit to EVs.
When you go beyond where we are today and we think about the future and the components that are, in an electric vehicle, you've got different types of bearings and other types of rolling elements for electric vehicle motors. And that'll apply to all forms of mobility, whether it's an e-bike or whether it's a autonomous delivery vehicle in the future. So we're diversified, and we expect to become even more diversified as this transition occurs.
The big players are changing plans too.
With electric vehicles, some companies like General Motors are trying to pretty much get as much in-house as possible because they believe that they can have a capital advantage as well as diversify their revenue streams by having a product that maybe they could sell to another OEM or even another industry like locomotive or planes or anything like that.
Car manufacturing is one of the most important trades in the United States. Roughly 2.7% of gross domestic product was linked to the production and sale of cars in the States in March of 2021. At its height in 1950, just one city, Detroit, built one of every 2 cars produced in the world.
Detroit became the Motor City because Henry Ford decided that he would do the Model T, mass produce that, and pay a living wage to blue-collar workers to pretty much come up south, wherever, and work.
Also, unions were huge in the Midwest, and that helped the average worker.
Up into the 50s and 60s, benefits and protections for workers was hard to come by. It was because of the UAW and its work with the auto owners that vacations were put into place. Insurance, health insurance, dental insurance, the opportunity to retire with a reasonably good retirement package. All of that came about because of the union working with management.
But these clusters of good jobs went away almost as quickly as they appeared. U.S. manufacturing reached an all-time high of 19.6 million workers in the 1970s.
And if you're in the Midwest, that year was probably 1973.
Even more dramatic changes began to unfold in 1994 with the North American Free Trade Agreement, or NAFTA.
NAFTA will tear down trade barriers between our 3 nations.
In this agreement, Canada, Mexico, and the United States eliminated the taxes that are charged on items that cross borders. With NAFTA in place, North America remained the world-leading producer of passenger and commercial vehicles. Halfway across the planet, Asian countries were developing manufacturing empires of their own. With the admission of China to the World Trade Organization in 2001, competition to make all kinds of durable goods, including cars, heated up. Critics of these policies say they hurt American workers.
The fact is, NAFTA has been a disaster for the United States.
While in office, President Trump renegotiated NAFTA and launched a trade war with China. These moves so far haven't drawn much activity back to the Midwest.
Reversing offshoring or trying to chase more manufacturing jobs through trade policy was likely to be a disappointing public policy because everybody agrees that a large share of factory job losses over the past 30, 40 years have been due not to China stealing our jobs or Mexico stealing our jobs, but rather the loss of jobs due to manufacturing workers being more productive. Mostly we think about it as technology. If you went back 100 years ago, we were using hand tightening wrenches. By the 1970s and 1980s, we started seeing computers. So doing this is what makes the economy grow.
But even as the economy grew, the good jobs kept disappearing. Union membership in key industries like auto manufacturing have declined dramatically through 2020. The competition for good jobs is more intense than it was in the past.
The contract workers have been around for a long time, but there haven't been as many of them until kind of the last 20 or 30 years. If they need a worker on the line, they can find someone to do that work through an agency rather than having to bring that person onto the workforce, which saves them money. And at the same time, though, that worker doesn't get the protections that most union workers would get.
As of June 2022, just over 1 million people had jobs in the auto manufacturing sector. More than half worked in the parts trade, which may be impacted by the green transition. Washington lawmakers hope that they can make the pivot.
The bill I'm about to sign is not just about today, it's about tomorrow. It's about delivering progress and prosperity to American families.
In August of 2022, President Biden signed the Inflation Reduction Act, which included a $10 billion tax credit to build new manufacturing centers for EVs, wind turbines, and solar panels. An additional $2 billion would go toward retooling old factories.
We might actually see entire plants shut down or close or have to transition, whereas the assembly plants, for example, might be able to just transfer from one workforce kind of set of skills to another.
The auto industry is laser focused on the new deadlines put forth by leaders in government around the world. The new factories will be highly automated, and workers may need more in-depth training. The changes could disrupt local economies throughout the American Midwest.
The fate of these companies is very intimately tied to the fate of the communities and whether the jobs will be there. But there are other ways that U.S. companies can kind of compensate for this loss of employment. So one is through their supply chains, and the other is through domestic production, increasing domestic production.
President Biden is hoping that some of these workers can pivot gracefully. His $52.7 billion investment in semiconductors could draw more companies to the states.
Today is a day for builders. Today, America is delivering.
This new law will attempt to wrest critical industries from the grips of Eastern countries. For example, semiconductors were invented in the US, but today, Asian companies dominate the global market.
Over half of the batteries used in the US come from companies that are based in South Korea, Japan, and China. So there's this big opportunity for the US to invest more in the batteries so as to bring them into domestic companies and therefore kind of offset the loss of employment.
These plans to bring manufacturing back, while important, are for now largely speculative.
Yes, EVs are growing and are coming, but it's not the profit driver at this point.
But companies far from the Midwest are determined to make an impact. Tesla got its start in California, and that state is planning to ban the sale of gasoline cars by 2035.
At the end of the day, it's about actually making green. And these companies saw the rise of Tesla. That, I think, led the way for a lot of companies rather than that traditional ESG.
The most important question that remains is how soon demand for EVs will materialize. Sales have stretched to 9% of the global car market, according to the International Energy Agency.
Unless we can make that change and make it pretty quickly, there are going to be bigger problems to deal with. And so I think we all know we have to do it.
There was an overwhelming sentiment among auto workers that they had earned the right to build the next American car because they had devoted their entire careers, their entire professions, including their knees and their bodies, to building these cars. And this coincides with these feelings of uncertainty that they don't know if they will actually be able to be a part of this new revolution.
I don't think that Midwest customer is ready for an exclusively electric vehicle household. We just simply don't have the charging infrastructure, not only in the Midwest, but really across the entire United States. So it's going to take a little bit more time. The Midwest is becoming more open-minded. I do think we'll see a gradual transition as long as the infrastructure is in place and the cars are affordable.